All right, welcome to Believe in Chargers with the great Lorenzo Neal. Matt Money Smith here. I am on location out of town, and Lo, of course, in his standard Fresno State Bulldogs cap with the Muhammad Ali taunting photo behind him. We know he is set up in the standard spot, but appreciate you, Lo, accommodating me. It is incredibly early on the West Coast as I am on the East Coast right now. So thank you, Lo, for looking bright and excited here at what is approximately, when we're recording this, 6:30 a.m. Pacific time.
It's early, baby. Come on, it's not early. Come on, I get up at 3:30 every morning, so we're
Wait
good
a
to go.
minute, what? I thought I got up early. You get up at 3. I get up at like 4:45-ish, and Lo is beating me by an hour and 15 minutes. What in the world are you doing at 3:30 in the morning?
You know what? I'm an early riser, Money.
Well, I would say so.
But I'm in bed usually by 8:30, 9 o'clock every morning. So I got a gym buddy. He's got a company that he works at. So he and I give it he gets up a little later. I do my little meditating at 3:30, then head to the gym, get there around 4:15, 4:10, and get on the treadmill for 30 minutes. Then we work out till like 6, and at least I got it out of the way.
I would say you got it out of the way by saying, wait a minute, we got to dig into this a little bit more. So what gym? When I worked at NFL Network, I was able to finagle the gym to open up a half hour earlier. I got them to open at 5 instead of 5:30. Yeah. What gym is open at 4 a.m. where you are?
GB3, George Brown Fitness. Look up George Brown's. He's open, okay. and then there's another.
And how many people are in there?
Oh, seriously, it's packed at 4:30, 5 o'clock. 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's absolutely packed. 4:30, 5 o'clock, you're fighting for weights. Fresno, baby. It's nothing else to do.
It's a good point, man.
Yeah, you can't be. If you get there at 5, you're not getting your machine. So 4:30, and then there's another one, Fort Washington. It's a little smaller gym. That opens at 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. every day. Fort Washington, I like that one. It's a little more quiet, a little more intimate, that you don't have to fight for weights. It's a kind of an older gym, more of the older crowd comes in there. So I have the feel of it in there.
A little more YMCA vibe.
Fort Washington. So look up that one. So when you come to town, look up Fort Washington. I know you're trying to see. I see you trying to reach deep. It's like, guys, there's candidates. They go, Fred, hey, 2 gyms. Look up Fort Washington. Right. Lindsay, I know you're back there. Put it in the chat. What time Fort Washington opens at 4 a.m. 4 a.m.
There we go, man.
Sometimes I'm waiting. I'm waiting at the door for the guy to open the door. 4 a.m.
Yeah. It's like, and it applies to football. This is not just personal story stuff, because Lo, I would imagine, they always talk about, hey, who's the first one here? Who's the last one to leave? That sort of thing. Were you always the first guy into the facility, or who used to beat you, or who was there with you when you got to the facility early?
You know what? I was almost the first one a lot. I'd love to go get in the sauna. I'd get there sometimes 5 o'clock. We don't have to be there till 7. I'd get in there, go get a workout in early, get in the sauna and hot tub, and just do what I need to do. So there's a lot of times I was first one in the gym. Absolutely.
Right. All right. Well, as Lindsay's saying, we need a live 4 a.m. Chargers show. No, we don't. As a matter of fact.
No, we don't.
That is not what I need. So, all right. Well, I'm not apologizing for anything then, as we get this thing rolling. I think the one takeaway from last week that certainly seemed to make some ripples in the comments was the discussion about Justin Herbert and whether or not you ought to restructure and make him the highest paid player and things like that. And I think a lot of folks, unfortunately, kind of maybe took it a little bit out of context. Like, why are you wasting cap space there when you have all these needs? The best way to take care of Herbert is to provide him with the players that he needs up front. And if you're paying him more money, maybe you're not paying, one of the top centers or interior linemen that you need to be paying. And I think, just to kind of quickly correct that, sort of my position, if I wasn't clear enough, my apologies. You just saw what the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. And obviously that's a different situation. His cap hit was going to be $73 million. So of course they're going to restructure that, but they restructured it down to just over 30, creating about $40 million in cap space this year. Did he give them back $40 million? No, they gave him a huge upfront lump sum that is now spread over multiple years. That way he gets more money. They continue to put him in line with the top paid quarterbacks in the league, while also creating some space because they have a ton of free agents on the defensive side of the ball that they've got to figure out if they need to re-sign, and they were already $11 million over the cap. So that's kind of what I was getting into there.
Yeah, I just don't think that people understand, like, well, give some more money. If you get more money, God, you're not going to be able to pay Mack, pay these other guys that you want to pay. People don't understand when you restructure, you give them a lump sum up front, but then you spread it out. It's kind of amortized like your house. You can't pay friggin' the whole $1 million for your house. So they give you a 30-year loan. You make payments. So what it is, it's just you still give them more money, but you're spreading out. And then you get more upfront money to go out and do exactly what the fans want. They want him to get more help, surround more guys around Justin Herbert. And by restructuring his deal, you can do that. You can go out and get the center. You can go out and maybe get a guard. You can go out and maybe get another interior lineman. So these are the reasons why you would restructure, to give yourself more cap space up front to go out in free agency and make a splash.
Yeah, and I think, the thing with Herbert too is, and look, this is twofold for me. And I think just to kind of continue the conversation, it's, yes, I do think that Herbert earned a little bit more based on what he went through last year and how well he performed considering the circumstances. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, man, you went through hell, you got your head knocked in, and we want to make sure you know how much we appreciate that and get you in line, even though it's not like you're too out of line making $52.5 million a year. It's not like you're struggling or anything like that. But my other point to this is you've got Dak making 60. You've got all of these contracts that are going to be coming up here in short order in their fourth year. What do you think if Dak Prescott's making 60, the Caleb Williams extension is going to look like? The Drake May extension is going to look like, So I think it's important to remember this number is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as free agency comes upon some of these quarterbacks. Some of the other quarterbacks come up for their next contract. That number is just going to continue to grow. So if you can get a little bit ahead of it right now and you pay him 60.5 to tip your cap and say, thanks for doing it. If you just do that extension in 2 years when he's got 1 year left, that number is going to be 65, 68, 70 million bucks anyway. So it's like you're almost saving money in future years if you do it right now, because that's what we've already seen. You signed him for an average of 53 and it immediately became 55, and now it's already at 60. And that was just 2 years ago. So there's also some math to it on that front. And I know the cap continues to go up. We're over 300 million this year for salary cap per roster. So that's going to continue to grow as well. But at the same time, I just think you can never go wrong. Like if you feel like you have a franchise quarterback, you can never go wrong getting them square if they are unequivocally their quarterback of your future and one of the elite players in this league. Like you can never do that too much, because all it's going to do is cost you more money the longer you wait, and then you're going to have to figure out how to make that puzzle work.
Tell me something. I know as I digress and go down this rabbit hole, because we're talking about 52, 60 million, 70 million, and maybe 75 million. What the hell is the owners making? If they're able to pay this type of exorbitant cap, right? You're able to pay, and that's just one guy. How are these owners? That's a lot of money when you look at on the books and think about for 1 year, if these guys, all 30, 52 guys on the team, you're spending 100, 150, 200, 300 million a year. So it's like, what are these owners making? Is the football doing this business that well?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Lo, I'll just do a quick little calculation based on what my understanding is. And I would say, according to gross revenues, if you were just and that's what makes the NFL the most successful league and form of entertainment in America, is that they are fortunate that everything is under one umbrella. Everyone pulls from one pot. So you don't have any local TV deals. All of the merch, all of that stuff is the only thing, is in stadium, and that sort of stuff goes into your pocket. And that's where you can get some adjustment here and there. But everything else goes into the pot and it's split up. And I do believe last year's estimated gross revenues were $23 billion. So if you just split that up evenly amongst 32 teams, about $750 million per team.
Yeah, I think, though, it's an interesting point, because, the Charger fans have, been comfortable taking shots at ownership about, they're not the, whatever, Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys, $12 billion valuation, how they spend money, which, by the way, if you look, they really don't spend, pretty heavily as much as you would think, considering their valuation. And the valuation and cash flow is actually a little bit different. The Eagles, now Jeffrey Lurie spends a lot of money. They are a very cash-rich team. If you look at the way they structure contracts, how much cash they're willing to pay out up front in order to have those voidable years on the back end, that helps them build a better roster because they are willing to just write check after check. Because once you have that guarantee and that signing bonus, that all has to either go into an escrow account or it is paid to the player directly. So that is where the levels of finance come into play when constructing a team and signing free agents, is your willingness to give them a lot more money up front, adding a lot more voidable years on the back, because that's how essentially you're able to sign more players, more expensive players, and fill your roster with better players because you can afford to do that. Instead of handing someone a 4-year deal, you're handing them a 6-year deal with an extra $20 million up front because you can afford to write that check. So that's kind of where the economics of it come in. I don't think there's any real cash poor teams anymore, just because everybody's making the same amount now. That there's, I don't know, I just don't feel like we see a lot of cheapness going on around the league, like you see in baseball where the A's or the Marlins or the Pirates are sitting there with payrolls in the 60 million, 70, 80, 90 million range, essentially the same as Shohei Ohtani's making per year, where the Dodgers and the Mets and the Yankees and the Cubs and teams like that and the Red Sox are paying, hundreds of millions of dollars. It doesn't exist in football as much, which is then what leads to kind of what we're about to get into. And that's the competitiveness of the free agent market. And the fact that, hey, Tyler Linderbaum to the Chargers is not a done deal because they need a center and he's a Baltimore guy that Joe Ortiz was in the front office when they drafted him. So here he comes. No, Tyler Linderbaum is the prize of the center, the interior line free agent class, and the Ravens want him back. John Harbaugh, I'm sure, is going to want him on the Giants. The Chargers are going to want, there's going to be considerable competition. And essentially in free agency, you're going to overpay. That's just the way free agency works in the NFL because every team's got money.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see just how it all pans out, what the Chargers are going to do with especially Linderbaum. You're talking about a center that is, one of the best elite center out there in the league. And you talk about a team that struggled and Justin Herbert, a guy that you continue to say, let's pay the man. You're going to pay that guy. You want to make sure that he's protected. So it's going to be interesting just what they do in free agency. If you don't get him, who's the backup? If you don't get that guy, who's the third? Because all teams, when they go into free agency, they're looking with the plan in mind that the first guy or the second guy might not get. And when do you deviate? When you deviate and say, you know what, we don't got our first or second guy at the center position, we're not just going to go get a center. Now we're just going to concentrate on the guard. Or we're going to concentrate on the defense side of the ball. So just interesting to see just how these organizations in their front offices work, especially when it comes to free agency.
And I think, it's all one giant puzzle. It's a puzzle with multiple parts. I'm trying to think of the best way to word that. Free agency comes first, and then what you don't get in free agency, you have the draft to back you up a month later. We're already hearing about franchise tags. Those are coming up in short order. Free agency, the negotiating period is going to start that start of the second week in March. I think it's March 9th. And then free agent signings can happen 5 or 6 days after that. And then after that, you got about a month and a half to get to the draft. And so, that's kind of how you put this whole thing together, right? If you don't get Linderbaum, if you don't get Connor McGovern, if you don't get one of those top centers, well, now you go into the draft knowing, okay, we got to figure this position out. And maybe that means you adjust your draft strategy. You trade back a little bit. I don't think there's not a first round graded center in this. So now you're looking at 22 and saying, okay, maybe we kick back a little bit. And that's how we'll get our center and hope that a young center is ready to go when you drop him in there. Or, you are in the market for one of those sort of backups that maybe you identified as someone who could have been a starter but was stuck behind someone that was better than him, or a guard that you can kick into center or something like that. But to me, I know it's not exciting. It's not talking about going out and signing Trey Hendrickson on the edge, or or Jawan Jennings as a wide receiver or something like that. It's a center. But to me, it's so like it's just the center of everything they need to do, pardon the pun, this offseason is identify how to get that position fixed. And to me, everything else can then sort of get taken care of from there. Just the quick pressures, the miscommunication, the missed assignments, all that stuff was just way too much the last 2 years. It's not tenable. It's completely and totally untenable. And to me, it's something that's got to be squared away in short order.
Well, so you're rounding out this center position. You're saying, okay, do we try to find one? What's the deal? Do they keep Zion? Do you move him back to center? Do you continue with this offseason to say, okay, this is going to be, let's go get a guard and we're going to make this work? Is that even a possibility? Do you try to keep Zion? How is this going to shake out in this before free agency starts? I know this Charger team, they probably need to fix house first.
I think to me, it's I would assume they'll approach Zion and say, what do you want? And they're going to probably say, we want to hit free agency. We want to figure out what the market is, which would make sense, and it's the same name that people keep going back to year after year. Year after year. It just happened last year. Aaron Banks, the guy got almost $20 million. He's not that good. He's not great. I don't even know if he's good. I mean, it, Lo. You saw him in San Francisco, and it's like the guy got $19.5 million per year to be a below average to average guard. So I'm sure Zion's people are like, well, there it is. Like, that's the market. And if there's another team out there that's willing to pay him that's what puts the Chargers in a tough position. Like, we've developed this guy. He's incredibly smart. He's incredibly strong. He's incredibly athletic. Does he have issues? Yeah, he struggles to see stunts, and now if you put an elite center with him that is taking care of the protections and is making sure his offensive line is all squared away, will that then kind of eliminate or relieve that one sort of issue? It's a major issue that he's got. And if it will, then he's worth it. Then you've got a guy who's exceptional in the run game, who's incredibly athletic. And for this particular offense that Mike McDaniel's going to be running, you think about having a body that big and a guy that strong on the move and what you can do with him and next to Slater and Joe Alt on the opposite side. I mean, you've got three incredibly large, strong human beings that can probably make some pretty good magic with this offensive line. And then I think the flip side of that is look at what Mike McDaniel had to work with in Miami in terms of talent on that offensive line and what he was able to do with it and how explosive of an offense and how many points he was able to score per game in that offense without those elite players, without a $20 million a year guard. So that's kind of where you've got to figure out. You've got $80+ million in financial resources under the cap. How do you want to distribute them? You've got Khalil Mack, Adafe Owe, who are free agents, Tuli, who's going into his final year that I'm sure you don't want to see him get there, and see if you can save a little bit of money on that moving forward. You got a Derwin James who's going into his final year of his deal. So there's a lot of moving, a lot of parts that maybe people aren't necessarily thinking about as much that could end up coming into play here.
Is Khalil the first domino to go? Like, get him off hey, he's older, he's getting the hometown discount. How do you feel? Where is Mac at? So I'd like to know, fans would like to know, where, in your professional opinion, where is he at? Is he a guy who's going to give him a discount? He's a guy who's going to try to stretch it and say, look, I want to get every dollar. Is he a guy to say, hey, look, I got Buffalo on the phone. Okay, there's some other teams out there that maybe would overpay. Where do you think his heart's at?
That's a great question. Only Khalil could answer that, right? But
right.
In terms of dominoes, I think Owe is probably the first domino, because I would imagine if they can find a number that he's comfortable with, that his people are comfortable with, they don't want him hitting the market, much like Tier Tart. They did it with Puna last year. They thought, hey, let's let Puna hit the market and establish something and see. And I think they probably offered him a little bit less, if not maybe a lot more less than the Rams were willing to go with $10 million a year. Maybe they offered him like $6 million because, he was just on a low 1 year prove it deal for a couple $1 million. So they probably figured, hey man, we'll bump that up to $6-7 million. How's that sound? And next thing you know, the Rams are offering him $10 million a year, and he's like, see you later. So I think in terms of Owe, that's something they want to gauge what that number can be and figure out, is Owe in that 17, 18, $20 million a year range, can you get that deal done? Because remember, Myles Garrett is making $40 million a year. So I don't think, what Max Crosby is making and stuff, like, how do you value or how do you financially put a number on what Owe is worth, considering the guy had 0 sacks before he was traded here and then just came alive, man. And by the time that wild card game ended, you're talking about a guy that made himself tens of millions of dollars. So I think that's probably priority one, much like they did with Tier Tart. They did not want to see a repeat of the Poona Ford situation last year. So they're like, hey, maybe we overpay him by $1 million or $2 million, but let's make sure this guy doesn't hit the market. They're too valuable. He's too valuable to the team. They got that knocked out, and I would assume they're going to probably try to do something with Owe like that. And then, to me, like Khalil, he's got 2 little ones. I think it's 2, maybe it's 3. But he likes LA. I think he's really comfortable here. I think he, does he want, like, I think the number would probably have to be pretty big. It would probably have to be north of like, $4 or $5 million difference for him to maybe cut out of here. Because I'm sure he looks at it and thinks defense is pretty much coming back. Believe in Harbaugh, believe in Herbert. Now we got an OC that I think can put up. It's like, because you think about the last 2 playoff games for Khalil, the guys never won a playoff game. The defense was good enough. Like, the defense was good enough to win those games against Houston, against the Patriots. They just didn't have any offensive support. And now I got to believe going into it, he looks at Amarian Hampton, the return of Slater and all, Mike McDaniel coming in like, yeah, we can make a run. And look, FanDuel agrees, right? FanDuel's got the Chargers 3rd in the AFC behind Buffalo and Baltimore as favorites to make the Super Bowl out of the AFC. And they're 6th overall, including NFC teams, behind the Rams, Eagles, Seahawks there. So I think, for Khalil, that's probably what he's looking at. How much money can I make? Do I have a chance to win a Super Bowl? Which then, to your point, Lo, if the Buffalo Bills want to move on from Bosa and just drop Mack into that spot where they were paying him 12 or 13 million bucks, if the Ravens, if Jesse Minter wants to bring him in, they desperately need edge help. Maybe he looks at that and feels like that's a better path. But outside of that, I think it's Chargers. I don't think he wants to retire, not after playing the level he's played at the last 2 years. So I think can we find a number that's, maybe it's not 18 million bucks again. Is it 13? Is it 14? And what would that number be in the rest of the league?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And like you just said, it's like kind of switching gears, just for FanDuel to put them at 3rd. You look at the odds, Denver's on the phone, there's teams that's saying, hey, look, how is this Charger team, the Houston Texans, when you look at it, what do you think that these metrics are based upon when you look at Chargers being as high as 3, when you've seen the last couple of years, they've get into the big game for some reason, injuries, whatever have you, they haven't had it.
So here's what I got. I got the PFF free agency posted. They've got Hendrickson as the number 1 free agent, number 1 edge player. Their projected contract is 1 year, 21 million bucks. Owe is right behind that at number 7. They have him as the 7th overall free agent in this class. And they've got him projected at a 4-year, 77 million total, 40 million guaranteed. Like we said, about 20 a year. I think that the Chargers would be happy to sign up for that. That maybe they'd be looking at a little bit less. Can we get him from like that 17, 18 range? Behind that, they got Jalen Phillips, who of course is dealing with some injuries, but he looked fantastic in Philly last year. Then you got Boye Mafe, who was on Seattle, and Bosa, and then they have Mack. They've got Mack as their 34th overall free agent. He would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th edge player on the market, and they have him at 1 year, 14. So if that's what the market is, and if the Chargers can get 14 to look a little bit more like 12, I think that would help them a lot, because after you get behind him, now you're really starting to get into the weeds. Then you get into Jadeveon Clowney, Draymond Jones, Cam Jordan, who is, in his 17th year or something like that. Brandon Graham, that's kind of what you're getting into after that. So I do think once you get to Mack, Bosa, Mafe, Phillips, Owe, Hendrickson, there's your edges, and so it's an important position, man. And that means if that's what their projection is, you're probably going to have to add $1 million or $2 million onto it because of desperation and teams that want to win, that sweepstakes. So, and that's why like the center is going to be so interesting, because you've got Linderbaum, who's their third rated. And look, this is just PFFs. Everybody else has their own way of measuring these things, but like they've got Connor McGovern all the way down at 78. They've got him at a 3-year, $39 million deal. They've got Linderbaum at a 4-year, $80 million deal. I don't think there's that big of a gap between them. I mean, they still have them at the number one and number two, as the number one and number two rated centers. And then the third rated center is Andre James, who couldn't beat out Bradley Bozeman for the Chargers. So like that just goes to show you how shallow the pool is for centers. And so that's, it's a good year to be a center, man, if you're Linderbaum or McGovern, because I think McGovern's probably going to get more than that because of the current, situation. Then when I put guards into there, guards are like, and this is like the thing about PFF. So they've got David Edwards at 32 overall, their second highest rated guard, third highest interior lineman. And they've got him getting 3 years, 35. And I got to believe he's going to get more than that. Thinking about what the guard market is, like this is what's wild about it, man. Like they do not like Zion. Zion they have is their 157th ranked player.
Wow.
And they're not even projecting a contract. And yet you and I both know what that thing's going to look like, because he's young, he's strong, he's smart. And I'm sure there's just way too many teams out there that are like, give me that guy, man. Let me get that skill set in here with my coaches, with my center, and watch what we can do. Right. So I think that's where you got to be careful with this stuff.
Yeah, no, you do. That's so crazy. That's so much it's too far of the spectrum just to watch this drop from 170th player to and especially at that position. So it is going to be interesting just to see what the Chargers what pool they're going to be in. We know that center, if they don't get that center, then, they'll probably look at the guard situation, or if they don't get the center, now you overpay Zion, because you do want some stability, especially with those two tackles you have coming back. So if you don't get your center, I think that you might overpay on Zion, and who knows what they're going to do at some of the skill positions. I don't see this Charger team making a huge splash in the skill position. If so, is it the running back position to say, okay, get Marion Hampton another backup guy? But you saw the way Vidal played. I don't know if you can just go out and do that. I don't know if that would be wise, because he's shown that he's a capable backup and played well as a starter. So I don't look at the skill positions. I don't know. Your receivers kind of broke down. I don't know if Keenan, do you bring him back? You saw the way that he worked earlier in the season and at the end of the year, just kind of, I don't know if they went away from him, what happened, but it was just some drop off at the receiver position. But you got young talent. You got McConkey. You got some young talent. So I don't know if this team is going to be huge in the receiver market on top end free agents.
Yeah, I think, that's the other thing that came out of it. Some people weren't happy with the conversation that, I had about Keenan. I think it was a couple weeks ago. And to me, it's just economics and reality. I love, everybody loves Keenan. He's great. I think it's just a question of where you're going to allocate those resources, and it's snap allocation. Again, it's where is Ladd the most effective? And if you feel like with Q, with Trey, and with Ladd, that you sort of have that 3-piece puzzle, sort of fixed, and maybe you draft somebody. There's always receivers in the draft. It's one of the deepest positions in the NFL now, with kids coming off Friday Night Lights and coming off 7-on-7s, and the way they're playing football now as kids, and what the wide receiver market is, and just the flashiness and the attractiveness of that position. It just feels like you can find them. I get that elite receivers are in a different category. There's not a lot of Jamar Chases out there, not a lot of Justin Jeffersons, but at the same time, I think if you look at it as a collective, right? It's more about what the room looks like, as opposed to, do we have that one guy? Is the room like, look at Jacksonville, right? You got Brian Thomas, who set the world on fire last year, and then all of a sudden, the whole offense gets unlocked the moment Jacoby Myers shows up. That's what they needed. Is Jacoby an incredible receiver? he's really, really good, and he's really good at what he does. And that's what they needed. And once they did that, now Parker Washington is clicking. Now Brian Thomas has kind of come back to life. So I think that's sort of the important thing that Mike McDaniel's going to have to dig into. What do I have for my offense as I draw it up? And am I missing something? And is that thing that I'm missing Keenan? Like, to me, if you're going to spend money, the thing that he'd be missing would be that take the top off, downfield, blazing speed threat. And is that Keandre Lambert-Smith, or is that somebody that you have to go out to get? I don't think he would look at that room and say, I need Keenan. Because I think he could look at it and say, I think Trey Harris can do a lot of that. Ladd McConkey can certainly do a lot of that. Q, even, with how good he is on some of those quick routes and what he was doing at TCU and yards after catch kind of stuff. Can he do some of that? I think he would probably look at that room and say, we could probably help ourselves a little bit with just some straight speed, man, just blazing speed to open things up.
Wow. So he might be one of them. You could see, it wouldn't surprise you if they didn't offer, or is low ball, or is it just something you're like, look, we just got to go in a new direction because we can upgrade and get the speed. Maybe not a more polished receiver, because he's very polished, great route runner. He's more of the Henry Ellard, older guy, just going to learn how to get open. But we're going in a new direction, so you can see that happening.
Yeah, I think so. I can, and I won't be surprised the other way, where Herbert's like, hey, man, it's my security blanket. You can't score a touchdown if you don't pick up a first down. And this guy's as good at getting first downs as anyone in the league. Let's bring him back. But I would assume that, that would be we're going to wait this out, and we're going to, if you can go out and find more money, by all means, we get it, man. You're at the end. Let's squeeze as much as you can get out of this thing, and then come back and let us know. I don't think it's we're going to pay a premium to make sure you don't hit the market kind of thing. And it's funny as I'm going through that, just the PFF stuff cracks me up. How you try to figure out what they're seeing versus what the market's seeing versus what some other evaluators are seeing. Like, Linderbaum has not been a great pass blocker in terms of their grades go. But then you look at Connor McGovern, he's been way better, a way better pass protector. Like, they've got his pass blocking efficiency in his career at 97.8. I go to Tyler Linderbaum's, and where is his pass blocking? 97.9. So there you go. So it's like, if that's his efficiency rate, let's see, what has he got? Pressures, 56 pressures versus what do you have? So 12 let's just go to last year, 12 pressures for McGovern last year, 15 for Linderbaum. And so that's where it comes into play. How big of a disparity is there between these two guys? Is it worth an extra $7 million a year? Wow. That's sort of the stuff that you're starting to get into with how you want to allocate your free agent resources.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you look at the numbers and you look at, what PF, all the different networks, what they're just saying about these different individuals. It's going to be interesting what the Chargers focus. We know they need a center. You need someone that's going to make the calls and make Herbert's jobs a lot easier. All the hits he took from inside the middle where he couldn't climb in the pocket. But you also got to factor in that you have 2 Pro Bowl perennial tackles that you're going to get back. What do you do now? Is it Zion? Okay, if I don't get the center, if we're going to overpay for Zion. You have your tackles locked up. So tackle, do you say I'm overpaid for the guard? Then you say, okay, offense side of ball, where we're going. From receiver, hey, we can get a fast guy. Maybe it's Tyreek, whoever, to stretch the field. Okay, we're going to get that guy. We're running back position. We look pretty good, but maybe bring in, another guy in here just to bring some more competition, because competition is always great. And then, of course, defensively, you don't need a lot. Okay, continue to build in the trenches, offense and defense. So when you come to free agency, when you really think about this Chargers team and you think about where they're at right now, there's not a lot missing. It's solidifying that offensive line and saying, okay, keep Zion and get a guard. If you say, hey, you keep Zion and get a guard, I don't think you can ask for a much better offensive line. I know you got to look at the right guard after that, but you still are a pretty solid offensive line. You have the receivers, you have the quarterback, you have the backfield. So this team is I think it's going to have to overspend. So when you're talking about the center position, talking about a guard position, I think they overspend because it's not a lot missing on defense side of ball.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, though. I think it's just you're going to spend on your own guys, right? So you're going to have to spend on Mack, Owe, and Tuli, and Derwin,
sure,
and maybe even Dayon. If you want to kind of get ahead of that as well. Tuli and Dayon are both in the same class. So you can get ahead of that by squaring those things away. I think Dayon, you might want to see one more year out of. He had a great season 2 years ago. Last season dealt with some injuries, was sick right there at the start of the year, came on a little bit more at the end of the year. So my guess is they'll probably want to see one more from Dan. And, unfortunately, off-ball linebacker is not the most premium position where guys are going to be, cashing in immediately in free agency. You can work that out. But yeah, I do think a considerable amount of that cap space is immediately it's already went to Tier. And now I think you're going to see a little bit more going to Tuli, Khalil. Oh, for certainly, if I just do it in order, you're going to see more going to Owe, likely Khalil, Tuli, Derwin. That's going to take up some of it. But yeah, I think if you're identifying what are we circling on this team that absolutely needs to be sorted out this offseason, you cannot go into next season without it's, both guards, because Zion's a free agent, and center. And that's where kind of the scales tilt toward bringing Zion back. Do you really want 3 new guys?
No.
No. If you can put Zion there, bring in a new center, bring back Trevor Penning, that can be a depth piece for, is flexible enough to be in a pinch, can play tackle, can play guard. I thought it was a rough go for him at tackle last year when they dropped him in there for that one game. And now that may just be unfair because it was so quick after he got here, that sort of thing. But I think they probably try to bring back Penning, so valuable as that 6th offensive lineman. And he is versatile and he's athletic. So to me, that makes a little bit of sense there. But that's where I think you make the case for Zion is he and Slade are familiar with each other. If you just put a great center next to him, and let's say instead of signing Linderbaum for all that money, it is McGovern that you sign for a little bit less, and it's next to Zion, and then maybe you draft that guard. That's where your 22 pick goes. You trade back out of 22 because there's depth at that position, and you can kind of pick up your other guard there and sign some of your depth pieces. Like you've got the Wyatt Tellers of the world out there, the Batonios, sort of like, hey, can I roll a dice that these guys are going to stay healthy? But you would back it up. Dalton Reisner, Zeitler, if he decides he wants to come out to the West Coast, he wouldn't do it on 2 separate occasions. But maybe he decides, yeah, you know what, I like what they're doing out there. That'd be great. But yeah, Batonio, do you roll the dice on Elijah Vera Tucker? What is that going to cost with all of his injuries? Siomalo of Pittsburgh's probably going to cost a little bit of money. So that's where I know we're doing a bunch of name salad here. My apologies, but that's kind of what we're getting at. To me, that's where they've got to figure out, all right, here's our pool of money for these 3 positions. Let's say it's $40 or $37 million. How do we get to, or 33 million? What? I don't know. I'm not making sense now, but you know what I'm saying? Like, this is how much money we have to fix this. What do we do with it? And so that's kind of what'll be, I think, priority number 2 behind getting Owe back here.
Yeah, and I think they're going to do that. I think you try to sign these guys before they hit the free agent market and say, okay, we got our guys set up for that. Now we got to concentrate on getting the center. Center and Zion, you say, okay, let's not look at any other position. Let's sign our guys that we have on this team, and then let's focus on Zion and getting a center because your window's open. The window for this team to make it a Super Bowl is now. Yeah. You're not going to have, you got McDaniel, you got him on a 1-year deal. 1-year deal. You got your OC. Don't know what the defense. Well, we know the defense. If you keep the guys in place, they know this defense. You're gonna have a new DC. You're gonna watch plenty of film, see what they did, see the tendencies, try to keep everything the same. So your window is open now. It's how bad do you want it, and what are you going to do to keep that window open? So I think you sign the guys that you have, and you find a way to get that. You find a way to keep Zion, and you find a way to get a center. And I think that's where you spend your money, and then the rest you build in the draft. Free agency is going to be interesting for this team.
Yeah, it's a lot of the same names we've been talking about, but we'll be able to dig into it a little bit more when we get to the combine next week. I'll be in Indy. We'll do this from Indianapolis next week, and that gives you an opportunity to kind of chat with a lot of those people. one of my great friends is a big O-line guy, and I'll be able to get with him. I always take him out for pizza and beer and pick his brain and get everything of what the Chargers need to do. So I'll do that probably right when I get there. By the time we do the pod, he and I will have already kind of gone through it, and I'll get my man Lance's sort of, take on everything and see if we can put this puzzle together, Lo.
Well, you're welcome to come on with some beers and pizza, and I see you slush. You're like, Lo, I gotta get this. So I'm like, hey, the big guy took care of you, got you drunk. So that would be a pod within itself.
Exactly right. Again, apologies for the situation on the East Coast. Hanging out with Preston does our intro. That tasty guitar lick is her, and she's out on tour. So we're doing little Bowery Ballroom tonight, and then DC on Friday, Philly on Sunday, and then I'm heading straight to Indianapolis. So good time out here, but appreciate you, Justin Lowe. Appreciate everybody. Thanks to our friends at FanDuel for always making it possible. Again, excited about our friends at FanDuel because they get the Chargers at at third in line for the AFC. I'll take those odds going into the season, just behind Baltimore and Buffalo. Feeling good about kind of where they're at right now. But we'll be back again next week. We'll be doing it from Indy, have a lot more for y'all next week as we're kind of a little bit more in the thick of it, just a week out of free agency.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to say both up. I'm going to say, let's go, Preston. Let's go. Enjoy the concert, buddy. Enjoy. Tell her I say congrats.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I got my roadie muscles going, man. Got to lug those amps and guitars and everything. So that's all I'm doing.
You should have had me to come be your bodyguard. You should have had your boy Lo come. Me and Pops to be bodyguard. You and I together. I got this.
You know what? Give it a couple years, and we'll hopefully we'll be needing security, Lo. So, all right. Appreciate everybody. Bolt up. We'll be back again next week.
Cheers.